You can't make this shit up. And this is a special episode if you can't make this shit up. Because on this episode, we're talking about you can't make this shit up. What am I talking about, David?
Hey, thank you, Kellen. I am your host, David Washington, with my host, Kellen Clark. And, Kellen is our social media manager at J.N. Washington. I'm the co-founder of J.N. Washington and CEO. And we are doing a reaction video to a previous video on this particular topic, DeSantis Sturmabteilung. Did I pronounce that correct?
Sturmabteilung.
Sturmabteilung. I'm getting
Close,
there.
close enough. Close enough.
It refers back to Hitler's SA, his personal militia during his time in Nazi Germany. And earlier this week, we had the original video completed, hosted by my co-founder and COO of JNW, Joel Hawksley, and also our political manager, Angelina Rahman. And so we're reacting to it because I saw the video and I just didn't think it hit the essence of why we chose this particular topic and what we were actually trying to communicate to you, our community, our listeners, and our viewers. So let me jump into the description of what we're going to talk about. We react to the episode by Joel and Angelina, DeSantis Sturm. Help me out here again.
Sturmabteilung.
Sturmabteilung. I'm getting there. But we're reacting to this particular episode by our colleagues, Joel and Angelina. The conversation focused on the volunteers' experience and not the troubling issue that we wanted to discuss with our community.
Yeah.
We wanted to discuss the Florida State Guard itself, established by right-wing governor here in Florida, Ron DeSantis, under the guise of a civilian disaster relief force. And instead, is being trained as an armed, combat-ready militia under his personal command, according to military veteran recruits who have quit the program. Several veterans resigned after becoming concerned at the militaristic training and abuse one disabled veteran suffered at the hands of instructors. And this is all according to an investigation by the Miami Herald and Tampa Bay Times, which was referenced by Joel and Angelina in their episode. Additionally, DeSantis increased funding for the Florida National Guard and created a state-run border force, a border security force. So you have the Florida National Guard and a new state-run border security force created by Ron DeSantis. And then on the cherry on top is this, state guard with a budget that grew from $10 million to $108 million. And we're talking about 400 original members. Now a request for 1,500 original members.
We definitely didn't hit that though, did we, David?
No, we did not.
No.
The DeSantis is struggling to get to reach the numbers that they're hoping for. He's requested helicopters, boats, cell phone tracking.
The whole 9 yards. It's essentially a small military force, but the existence of which is at odds with what was advertised. What was advertised originally was disaster relief force. Chances are we may have a very rough hurricane season this year. And so it was originally advertised as if it gets rough, we'll have this force to streamline things, get people out of the cities, into out of the coast, things like that.
Right.
And also to supplement law enforcement in situations like that. But even law enforcement doesn't have as hardcore training as these guys. Law enforcement, they're trained how to handle emergencies, how to hold their own if someone's threatening them.
Sure.
They're not trained in true combat. They're not trained as ground up fighters. They're like law enforcement are fighters when demanded. These are fighters.
Right.
But why is the question?
Right. I don't understand how the scope of the job performance moved from evacuation, for instance, during a natural disaster or preparation for a national disaster to actual training for hand to hand combat. And it's it's thought that many of these recruits to this state guard were under the impression that they would be in a situation like that they volunteered not for a militia, but for something that was civilian based. They're wearing fatigues when they thought they'll be wearing khakis and polos, you know? And so, what is the motive of moving the scope of this particular state guard from civilian support to
Yeah.
a militia?
And I would really like to emphasize this was a shock to the people who got there. There were some people that said, well, it was on a military base. I was expecting something. But one of the combat veterans, this one that had abuse, so he essentially criticized the program to his commanding officer, who was much younger and less experienced than him. He leaves to go to the meal hall, and two guys grab him and drag him out. Which, first off, you don't do that. Let's start with that. That is beyond unprofessional.
Yes.
And I would not be surprised if this veteran takes him to court over it. I would not be shocked in the slightest, because that is unacceptable. But on top of that, the reason he was doing this and not Army is because he was injured. He was not. He had a bad leg, so he wanted to serve his community, but couldn't do it overseas. He couldn't do it on active duty. So that's why he and a lot of veterans came here. And that's why they're leaving now, because the rug was just pulled out from under everybody. Not to mention the fact that the officers have been instructing members, and this comes from those veterans who quit, that the officers have instructed the veterans to not talk to the media about it, which shows that they're trying to play cards under the table.
And you make a good point in the analogy of a rug pull. That's a very good way of saying this. Some people, they were not informed that they would be going through a rigorous physical boot camp without a physical exam, without looking at medical records. They walked into this saying, okay, where's my polo? Where's my khakis? Where's my clipboard? But, they're out there acting as if they are training for, war.
The Army, the normal Army.
Exactly. And that is a dangerous rug pull, as you said, because they're there under false pretenses. The scope of the work has changed. And when you have commanding officers, I use that loosely. There's an adjunct general in charge. I think, what's his name? General Haas. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, Haas.
Thank you. Saying, one, blaming the recruits who left and went and participated in this investigation by the Miami Herald and the Tampa Bay Times, and blaming them and saying, why did you do that? It appears that, there is something to hide, that what they were doing was not within the original scope of why it was created. And the Republican legislature, I'm not saying they are complicit in helping to create this. They're complicit in increasing the budget per the governor's request. Are they complicit with knowing that this was the new scope of the work? I don't know.
Maybe.
However, I do understand and I remember speaking about this months ago on probably this particular podcast platform. Charlie Crist, then running for governor against DeSantis, said no governor should have a private, personal
No.
militia under their own control. And DeSantis has personal control over this particular state guard. It's dangerous.
And here's something else. Playing the blame game in politics, it's often a very fruitless endeavor, but it's something everybody does.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times it's easy to blame the president for something that went wrong somewhere else in the pipeline just because it's under him. It's easy, and it's a lot of times it's easy for high-level executives to just divert it. Somebody else did it, associated with me, wasn't me, my bad, guys. This happens all the time in politics. That is not an excuse here, because it is the governor's force, meaning everything you see is DeSantis himself.
That's right.
His personal actions, not the actions of a group, the actions of an individual, potentially two, if it's Haas as well.
That's a very good point. This falls on his shoulders. And now that we are in the beginnings of the hurricane season, and when Governor DeSantis was approached and asked about preparing for the hurricane season during the time where people are losing their property insurance, his only retort was, well, I'll deal with it after the hurricane season. Wow. Talk about out of touch. And maybe this state guard is there, his personal militia is there to stomp down, and crush any dissent that may arise after a hurricane rips through Florida, causes billions of dollars of damage, and people will have no restitution.
Recourse. Yeah, and don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, the Florida National Guard has oversight. It can be pulled if the governor is being abusive. The governor is not going to put oversight over himself. That was the whole purpose of this. It was to remove oversight, to remove responsibility, accountability for his actions. And look at how much he's funding it. $108 million to prevent people from getting money. That is money that we're investing into this private army, which has no reason to exist in the first place. When we could be managing anything else, it could go to the citizens of Florida, but no, it's going to DeSantis. It's the same reason we pay his salary, even though he's running for president. It's the same reason, just everything. It's all about pocketing money and just putting our cash into the pockets.
Damn, Kellen, you hit the nail on the head when you said that the state guard is only accountable to the governor, but the Florida National Guard can be pulled if the governor does not act accordingly. And that is a very good point to make. And this is, it's not about the recruits. This particular story, this particular investigation by the Tampa Bay Times and Miami Herald is not about the recruits. It's about their role in keeping government in check. It's checks and balances of this particular governor, this particular legislature, and giving the citizens the information they need to make good decisions. And so I'm disappointed that the previous broadcast was more focused on personal deeds or the attacks on the veterans.
It focused on the people themselves, under the idea that if you're on a military base, you're in the military, and you shouldn't be complaining about that. There was just, but I don't think that was the key takeaway. I think the key takeaway was the lack of communication and the what I personally would view as blatant false advertising. And
Sure.
government consolidating power, the executive branch, has been a recurring theme of the 2020s. And it's not just DeSantis, it's also overhead. Like, remember when the Restrict Act was supposed to come out?
Yes.
The ability to make huge decisions was going to be in the bureaucracy. It was not going to be in
Yes.
Congress, where if you were going to pass that crap act, that's where you would realistically put it. When I talk to my family who live in Utah and Idaho, and I talk to them about the schools, the universities in Florida, and how the governor basically just swaps out people for, conservative regurgitators, people who will, intentionally force their ideology into schools. They're shocked, not because someone would be motivated to do so, but that the governor has the power to do so. Because over there, they don't. And we just keep putting more and more power to the executive branches in the Florida state level and on the federal level. And regardless of whether or not you like DeSantis in the past or you like him now, like, even if you like this guy and you trust him, you cannot trust every executive that comes to power. Who's to say, even if you think DeSantis handling things perfect, maybe his successor is a complete bonehead and will mess up everything, siphon your cash, and just start beating the hell out of people with the army. You never know. You can't. Executives are the most unpredictable branch of government.
Yes. Yes, and it is funny that you mention that because one of our future broadcasts of You Can't Make This Shit Up speaks to the executive branch, and particularly the the Republicans or conservatives move towards the type of government that we have in Hungary and President Orban, and that executive strongman. And just as a teaser, the project is called Project 2025. It's headed by the Heritage Foundation, and it has a lot of different players involved. But that'll be something that'll come up in a future episode of You Can't Make This Shit Up.
You forgot to say spoiler alert, David.
Ah,
what have you done?
Spoiler! Just a little tease. We want you to come back. We want you to come back. And this is a good time to say, hey, if you like what you hear, and maybe if you don't like what you hear, please, comment. We would love to hear your comments. You're part of our community. I met a young lady this weekend who called me, who was behind me at an event, and she said, David Washington. And I turned around and said, yes. And she's like, I watch your podcast. And I was like, wow. She recognized me, and she's like, I'm new to the area. I'm into politics, and I like your podcast, and I want to shout out to her. And it's a good example. Please, comment. We'd love to hear what you have to say. So Kellen, my final word, and we'll go to your final word. My final word is this, is that here at J&W, we want to give you content that is thought-provoking, that is current, that is something that may have been in the far past, but we felt is relevant to today's times. And we want to be thought engaging and let you know that we want honest and sincere communication and dialogue, regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, because we are your political innovators, and we want to bring you content that gets the conversation started and keeps it going. Kellen?
Final word and half. The half is, if you disagree with us, go like the other video. But my real final word is, David already hit the nail on the head with content, is that you can't always trust the executive branch. The executive branch is notoriously unpredictable. If you want to expand the government, do so in legislative bodies where things have more red tape and where we have to take more reasonable steps, and we have to have a consensus, not one person having all the power. With that being said, like, comment, subscribe on this video, unless you disagree with us. And tune in next week. We have lots more fun stuff coming.
Awesome. Kellen, thank you so much.
Yeah.
This has been awesome. I really, really enjoyed it. And let's do this again. You know, we talked about reaction videos. Let's do this again.
Yeah. And you know what? Maybe if you and I do a show in the future, Joel and Angelina can have their fun.
Bingo. Sounds good to me.
The beauty is people can hate either side and still have an episode for them.
Exactly. We can, you know, have a difference of opinion, still work together.
You can. And yeah, that's
right.
that's the most unique thing about us. So it's fun to emphasize it.
All right, gonna do some music on our way out, and we'll see you all the next time. This is You Can't Make This Shit Up.
All right.